morning, everyone. A warm welcome to all of you who are here at my talk. What a great day to start with this topic, making your website WCAG compliant. If you want to access these slides, you can scan the QR code, which is right there at the left. Or here, you can go to the URL and can access these slides there. I'm a web developer and an open source enthusiast. I work a lot in usability and web accessibility. So today I'm here to tell you how you can make your website WCAG compliant or WCAG compliant. Some people say it WCAG, some people say it WCAG, but today we are going to learn what it is all about and how it can help you as a developer to make your websites more accessible to users. And who are these users whom we are talking about? I just want to start with web accessibility, which means that people with disability should be able to access the web. And then web content accessibility are the guidelines which set up a standard so that people who are coming to your platform, even if they are disabled, should be able to properly access your websites and web applications. But why do we need these guidelines? Is there anything important to you to consider these guidelines? What advantage these guidelines gives to you? Well, before going that, let's discuss some of the user stories. Meet Kyle. Kyle is a vision disabled, which means Kyle is not able to see anything on the web. He is vision disabled from the birth. Now, Kyle wants to go to internet to access an online course, but he's not able to do so. So Kyle realizes that he wastes his all energy whenever he goes to the internet to access that course. 90% of the websites are just like that. They are not accessible to people who are vision impairment. Meet Gordon. Gordon is dealing with a motor disability. When Gordon uses mouse, he actually gets frustrated easily because he can't use mouse for more than 2 to 3 minutes. So Gordon uses mouse stick to access web. But as a fact, mouse stick works better with the operating system. But most of the websites which we have made as developers supports only mouse. So for Gordon, using a mouse stick is a waste if he's going to a website. Meet Chris. Curtis is a person who is dealing with hearing disability. Curtis can understand everything but cannot listen. So if Curtis is seeing a video, he can make sense by just guessing what is the content in the video. But if the video is missing captions, Curtis is not about to access any content which the video is trying to deliver to him. So Curtis relies on his own intuition whenever he sees a video. So I'm not talking about Kyle, I'm not talking about Curtis, I'm not talking about Jordan. What I'm talking about is 217 million people on this planet who are dealing with the same kind of problem, and 37 million out of them who are blind. So why you should consider this? Well, there are 3 things that is important to understand while dealing with disabilities. There are 3 factors, the 3 advantages you give to your website when you make your website WCAG compliant. The first one is empathy, which is very usual to understand. And that is like, if I want to access the web, why that person should not be able to access the web, right? So the same disabled person should be able to access the web. The second is the point that is called business. So if you have a competitor who has made his website WCAG compliant, So these disabled users, who are 217 million people, will love to go to your competitor's website rather than your website, because your website is not compliant to serve that person. The third important point is legislation. So there are few countries who have the rule already set up to make all the website WCAG compliant. And there are some who are coming and implementing these rules. So how we as developers think that our users are using web? Only mouse and keyboard, right? So we think like whoever is coming to our website, maybe he's using mouse or maybe he's using keyboard. But the reality is, a lot of people, these 217 million people, they use screen readers, switches, headbands, mouse sticks, and a lot of other devices to access the same content which you are making. Well, these are the most specific kind of disabilities that you can think of. Hyperactivity disorder, hard of hearing, language problems, brain injuries, motor disabilities, cognitive disabilities, there are a lot. But these are the most specific categories. So if you gives an input, means you make a website, and your user agent, which you think like Chrome, Mozilla, Internet Explorer, maybe, so you make your website only compliant to these browsers, and you check the responsiveness daily to check if it is working at all the platforms. But this is called narrow-minded approach. You need to realize that there are a lot of screen readers that comes into action when you take these websites. So these screen readers are also going to be your user agents. And this is not the end of the story. Now, these are the magnifiers and other devices that also access the same website which you are making. So in total, these are going to be your user agents. And these are the most specific ones. There are a lot. So how WCAG solves this problem? Well, WCAG gives us 4 principles which we need to understand. Perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. If you can meet all the success criteria written in these principles, your website becomes WCAG compliant. Every principle out of them having its own success criteria. So, and we are going to look at those success criteria. Every success criteria of these principles fall into one of those categories, A, AA, and AAA. A compliance are for critical people, means you need to achieve A compliance at any cost. AA compliance comes after A, means you need to achieve for some people. While AAA compliance, if you achieve, it will be better for everyone. Our focus in this presentation is to achieve till AA because AAA is very difficult to achieve. So let's start with perceivable. Information and UI components must be perceivable to your users who are coming to your website. Seems like a very simple definition, but I will show you the maximum mistake we as developers do daily, which does not allow to make our users to get the perceivable information. Well, just for a fact, the first website that was released was accessible. But now, after making these UI UX layers, we developers has made all the websites inaccessible. So, just begin with very simple thing, the alt text. So you have already used a lot of images inside your websites. And it is always recommended to use alt text, so that whenever a screen reader reads that image, instead of reading the SRC, it should read the alt text, which is the information about that image. So always have alt text inside the image included. Otherwise, the screen reader is going to read its SRC, which is the source. Something like https amazon.com/this image, right? So if you want to ignore this, if you want your users to get so that they can get the information about the image instead of the source from which it is coming, just use SRC, just use alt tag. Also, if the information is generated dynamically, which means you don't know what type of image it will generate, make an alt text and make it blank so that the screen reader will skip that image instead of reading its source. pre-recorded audio. So for users who can't hear, the pre-recorded audio should have transcripts. So there are plenty of URLs here which you can go and take the transcript for your videos. Some of them are for commercial services, which means they are paid services, while some of them are automated services like YouTube. Now you upload a video and you get the captions associated with them. And then at last there are some open source services like O-Transcribe, where you can go and write your own transcripts for your video. For pre-recorded video, this is something you need to understand. If you have a WebTT file, the WebTT file you can directly give to the track inside your video source code, and inside the track element of HTML, if you give the source as this file name, it will going to append these subtitles there whenever the video is playing on the screen. How many of you have dealt with the problem of color contrast? Every time you go to web, and every time you play with colors, you are just like, okay, this color suits better here, this color suits better here. But we forget those colorblind people who are dealing with this type of disability, where they can't identify different colors which you are just making significant for them. Now, which color works where is achievable now with the color contrast checker. So if you were not comfortable enough to decide the colors on the foreground and background, you can directly go to a website like color contrast checker and can check which of these color combination contrast ratios will make your website AA and AAA compliant. Orientation. Never makes your user restrict to a particular orientation. There are people who cannot move their neck. So if you restrict them to a particular orientation, they might be unable to access your website. Resize text. So we as developers often use pixels to take font sizes into consideration. But there are people who have low vision impairments. If they want to access your website, they want to zoom in and zoom out at the same time. When you zoom in, your text size does not increase. This is hard-coded pixels, and they're not able to access that particular website. While there are magnifiers designed already as a Chrome extension, which generally people use who are disabled and who are dealing with low vision impairments. And what they do is just use that extension and put it on your website to access the content. If you have hard-coded pixel, that magnifier is not going to magnify that information that the user wants to perceive. And that's a problem for us. So if you have those percentages instead of pixels, this will help users to magnify more relatively to our surrounding text. The next principle which we are going to understand is operable. After perceivable, we'll end up to operable, which means the elements should be operable, means the person, the user should be able to operate those elements which you are going to give them on the screen readers. Now, this is a common mistake which I have seen in a lot of websites. So you have input, so some of us, like mostly every one of us, they don't consider using this label tag, right? They just say, okay, just use input. Why do we care about labels? Labels are important because screen readers read information which are written inside those labels. But this piece of code is also having a common mistake. The point here is, if you give this piece of code to someone where there's a matching between 4 equal to username and name equal to username inside the input, you will end up with a screen reader something like this, which says edit text blank. So if there are 2 inputs on your website, and if the screen reader is reading the username input box, it will give you edit text blank, which does not give any information to a person who is blind. How can we correct this mistake? Instead of name, if you use ID in the input tag, the ID equal to username should directly match with the 4 equals to username. And if there is a matching in between, the screen reader will become happy. And now it will say username edit text, which will give the correct information to the individual who is blind but using a screen reader to access your content, that here you are going to put your username, right? The person can put the username and can click tab and go to the next input box. Skip navigation functionality. Just think about your users who are using your website, who are blind and then who are using keyboard. They can't use mouse, they're using keyboard to just go from one tab to another one tab to another one. But whenever you use that, you have a long menu bar containing 27 items. That person don't want to access these 27 items and want to directly jump to the main content. But you have made it difficult for him, because when the user will press tab, it will have to navigate 27 items first to reach the main content area. Skip navigation is a functionality where you just tab once and it will give you a navigation at the top, move to the main content. So when you press tab for the next time, you will just directly land up to the main content section instead of navigating to the whole navigation bar. So this is an example of skip navigation. If you can see in the image, there is a skip to main content area button. So initially, if you can see the code, the position of this skip link button is 200 pixels negative top, which means it is not visible for other users. But whenever somebody, type tab, which means focus, whenever somebody focuses on this, it goes to top 0 and becomes visible. So if someone who is accessing your website through keyboard is using it, whenever that person presses tab, it will focus on that particular button, and that button appears, changing its position from top minus 200 pixels to top 0. That button appears, and next time the person tab again, it lands up to the main content area, because the skip link class says href is hash content. So that just go to the main content area. The next point, which is a very common mistake I have seen, is we as developers think like div and button are the same. So our designers give some mock-up, and the button seems like very dangerous to design. So what we do is we remove the button tag, we take the div, and we style it properly, right? Making proper classes, we give proper styles, make it just like what the designer has given, and very proudly go to the designer and say, oh, this is what you require, right? But if you remove the button tag and if you use the div, it is no more accessible to your users, because if the screen reader will land up to the div, it will identify it as a div and not the button. So it will say, this is a div containing some information, but the user will not able to get it, that he needs to tab again to click it. So just assume like this div is going to be a button where the person is purchasing something from you. So what you have done is you have make it inaccessible for your users to purchase anything on your website. Total loss, right? So just remember, whenever you are designing, make sure that div, instead of div, you use buttons, because buttons can be accessible because they are better readable by the screen readers and the other accessible devices which are present. Now let's see about low vision impairment. So there is two types of vision impairment, one for the persons who are totally blind and one who are having low vision issues. For example, I have the spectacles, maybe I have low vision issues. By the fact, out of 10 people, everyone is having some kind of disability. So that's why this topic is very important. So if I go with the low vision impairment, let me play this. So if you can see, some of your users is going to see the content in a different color. Some of them will see it with a black screen on the right, while some will see a black screen at the diagonal. These partially blind or low vision people will not be able to access the same content which you are going to deliver. So as a whole, you should never make colors as your first priority. Because, for example, if you have seen a pizza box containing red for non-vegetarian, green for vegetarian, and if it is not written that green stands for vegetarian, for a person who is colorblind, both the colors are same. So he will not be able to guess which of these is vegetarian and which is not. The same applies to the web here. If you have made a specific information just related to colors, every time you should make text corresponding to those colors, so that the user should be able to read instead of just seeing the colors and making conclusions. By the way, this is a extension, Chrome Shades, which I have used to just mock how low vision people see this web. Care about seizures. Seizures are neural activity in the mind after seeing some kind of animations more than 3 seconds. More than 3 times in a single second. So, an incident happened in Japan in 1987, I suppose, where a cartoon, Pokemon, have made 627 people, children, inside the hospital on the same day. What was that cartoon and what happened was just all of them were dealing with seizure. An animation more than 3 flashes in a single second can give your users a seizure. So, according to this, every web page which you make should not contain anything that flashes more than 3 times in a single second, right? Because if you are doing that, maybe your users are going to have seizures. Proper inputs. So, if you have label, obviously you have label now, because I have already told you in the back presentation. So, if you have label now, and if you have input, so if I take this and give it to the screen reader, this part on the left, it is going to read it like first name star, second name star, third name star. Do you want your users to get that star? No. So sometimes it is better to write more code like this, where you just hide the star from the screen reader, but deliver the star to your other users. At the same time, you provide label to the input box so the screen reader can read the information. Here, if you can see, for this star, I have written area hidden equal to true. The area hidden equal to true makes sure the screen reader will not read this information. So in a simple HTML tag, if you're writing area hidden equals to true, that means the screen reader is going to skip that portion while it is reading the whole DOM. Now, so sometimes it is better to write repetitive code, right? Don't do it. So we as developers always write this line at the top while writing CSS. For all the elements present on the page, or maybe the anchor text present on the page, use outline none. Very important, right? Because your designer have given you a mock-up in which if you show the outline, it will not pass the other levels inside the company. But have you thought, if you write outline none, what type of effect it will give to the users who are using keyboard to access your information? So if the person having no outline means no focus, and you feel like going tab, 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 nothing is going to happen, right? So outline none is very dangerous for you. So instead of writing outline none, try to think of different ways where you can take the designer's approach, but at the same time, make your input boxes accessible to your users. The next operable thing which we need to learn is time-independent interaction. So, time-independent interaction happens when you are not able to perform a certain action in a given amount of time. For example, we are filling up a credit card information and suddenly the session expires. Now you have your own speed, but there are people who are dealing with disability, which takes more time to them to make sense what is the content on the screen. And at the same time, session expires. So whenever you do this kind of thing, you should be able to give your users the extension to increase that timer maybe, or adjust that time maybe. So whenever, let's say whenever a screen reader or that person is reading and it comes across that particular time gap, which is just 6 seconds, just give him an option like press the space bar to adjust the timing again. so that the person can press and increase the timing according to him. So this kind of thing we see where it says session timeout, please try again. The next part is providing control to your users. Now control is because if there is a video animation, which most of us uses because it looks fancy on the website as the first load. So a video is playing, but there are people who have problems with that video. They don't want that video because they can have seizures or they can have any other problems. Always provide your users with an ability to control that video. Maybe a play button, maybe a resume button, maybe a pause button. But this is a guideline provided by WCAG that every time you make any video on the screen, any animation on the screen, make sure your user should be able to control that. Now, the next part we need to understand is understandable. So we have completed the perceivable, then we completed the operable. And now it's understandable. Making web pages readable is the first point inside the understandable. So how you can make your web pages more readable? If you use the language as the top, which most of us skip because it does not make any sense to us. So if you use language English, the screen reader and the other accessibility devices will be able to make sense that this web page is going to be in English, so that they can better analyze and can then better get back to their users. So every time you should specifically enter language equals to English inside your HTML tags. Input assistance is super important. So if you're dealing with the inputs and if you're not giving your users the correct directions where they are wrong, it does not make any sense to them to understand what is the information on the screen. I have seen various websites where there are input tags, users are filling wrong information, they submit, the information does not submit on the server, but still they are not getting any errors that what have they done wrong. So that makes your users deficient of the content that present on the screen. So they are not able to make any sense out of the content that is present on the screen. And they say, I don't understand what is it, right? Make web pages more predictable. This is the next guideline that comes under understandable principles. And what it says is whenever you focus on a particular element or whenever you write any input box key press, make sure that you are not changing the context. What does that context mean is if you're writing anything inside the input box, maybe the page should not change. The user should be on the same page. The content, the context of the page should remain the same. Never try to implement any functionalities on focus or maybe on change of the input like key press, which can confuse your users. The last and the most important one for future, not for now, is robust. The robust is a principle which says whatever you are making today should be there for the future as well. So, for example, if you are talking about HTML, so this is very simple. If you're talking about HTML, every time you should end up your tags. You should never skip the ending tag because sometimes for screen readers who are, upcoming screen readers, the new versions, they behave very differently if your HTML DOM is not designed properly. So markup should pass the HTML5 validations. And IDs should be unique, right? This looks simple, but if you go to any web page and you analyze that web page, you will come across a situation where IDs are saved. And we all know that IDs should be different and unique. Well, every time I end up in my session, every time I give more power to my audience. And that's why I introduce you to the more efficient tools that you can use to make your websites more accessible. First tool which I need to introduce is Accessibility Chrome extension. So this is a simple Chrome extension which you can download easily from Chrome. And what it does is it gives you the whole accessibility tree. What I mean by the accessibility tree is it will tell you at every step, oh, don't use this. This is a div. Here you need to use the button. It is more generic. So you can get whatever your DOM is, the DOM is changed to an accessible tree now so that you can understand that and analyze it better. So this is the accessibility developer tools. For accessibility testing, this is how this works. So the accessibility developer Chrome extension gives you a tree which is at the left for this particular DOM element. Tenant.io is one of my favorite sites. What Tenant does, it gives you a report saying, hey, you have made this inaccessible to your users. Hey, this is not WCAG compliant. In that way, you will be focused on only that part of your website which is not accessible, instead of analyzing your website as a whole. So the better part about Tenant, though it is a paid service, but the better part about Tenant is you can integrate it with your CIs or automation testing. So whenever you push any commit to your GitHub, it can go and check if that commit is WCAG compliant or not, right? So, but obviously this is a paid service. So it gives you a snapshot. So this is a snapshot of Tenant, which gives you the information about what is wrong and what is right, how many issues are there on this website which I have analyzed, and it gives you the code to make it better, as well as a suggestion in the description why it is wrong. The next part, the next tool which gives you more power, is the color combination tool. This tool helps you analyze what is the best foreground and background color combination, so that you can make your users more familiar who are dealing with vision impairment issues. So it gives you whatever color you will select, it gives you the corresponding background color to it, which is AA and AAA compliant. This is my favorite and the free tool which I use often. This is Total Y by Khan Academy. This is a tool which gives you a report something like this on the screen. So for example, you can just take this tool and drag it inside your bookmarks, and it will appear like a tab which you are seeing on the right. After that, you can put anything out of these, the contrast or maybe the screen reader information, and it will just give you the things which are incorrect on on the entire web page, corresponding what you have chosen on the button. And this is brilliant. The Chrome team have worked very hard to take Chrome audits into your Chrome browser now. So you can just go to your audits tab inside Chrome and can run an audit. Once you run that audit, it will just go through the website, analyze the whole website, and will give you a report, which you can read and make sense. So after performing the audit, you will be able to understand which type of users will not be able to access your content. So this is the audit tab which you are seeing, just corresponding to the lighthouse logo. So this kind of report is given by this audit, which says in the accessibility, this things are missing. So you should consider here, you should not use div, you should use button, you should use labels, you should use aria hidden for this particular thing, or a lot of things can be there according to the perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust principles. So what we learned? Basically, we started with WCAG 2.0. So WCAG 2.1 has already been released. WCAG 2.0 was released in 2008, and after 10 years, W3C realized there is a need. So it released WCAG 2.1 right now. What we have just learned so far was the principles associated with WCAG 2.1, right? So 4 principles: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust, and their success criteria, which falls into different categories of A, AA, and AAA. And this is the whole which you have understood so far. Alt text, captioning, contrast ratios, orientation, seizures, time-independent interactions, give your users more control over the screen with those play, pause buttons, resizing screen text, skip navigation, keyboard navigation, making web pages more readable, making web pages more predictable, unique IDs, validated HTML content, and error handling at the last. So this is the whole part which you need, to kind of a checklist whenever you design your website, just scroll them one by one, to check if you have met all the success criteria of perceivable, operable, understandable, and finally, the robust. So what should be your next steps from today? Just go whatever website you have or whatever website you have made so far, run an audit of that website to analyze what users are thinking about your website. Or maybe, are they going to your competitors? And then you realize which type of difficulties your websites have, and then you can go and correct those mistakes using these 4 principles. And finally, just follow some accessibility people or maybe the communities who are working in accessibility, so that you will be updated with all the compliance rules and regulations. Well, questions, I'm up. So if you have any questions right now for this presentation, you can ask me right now here. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Any questions, please? Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to argument. We need the screen or the WCAG compliance in our application, because maybe we have a business application and there are only few people who need this. So how would you argue to also support this criteria?
So, great question actually. Few people need this according to your business needs maybe, right? So as I told initially, there are 3 criteria you should focus on: empathy, business, and then legislation. If you think according to your business, there are only few people who are disabled and who are going to use your website, I'm just going to tell you a figure. The persons who are sitting here, every 10 and out of every 10 a single person is dealing with some kind of disability. These rules are not specific to a particular disability, while they make your website more user friendly as well. So there is no loss of applying WCAG compliance to your website, but there is a profit always. So even if you are a business who thinks like there are no people who are going to use this and you don't need that, I mean, if you analyze your websites properly, you will come across different kind of people who are using different kind of strategies to access your business websites. So in all, you need, even if you skip some of these steps and if you go for AA only instead of AAA compliance, you will also be good, because you don't need to enforce those rules which are very difficult to apply. But you can apply those rules which are very simple and can make your website more usable to your users. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you know any CLI tools that could use this?
There is one, I can give you a link. So there is a guy, I guess, Eddie Osmani. So Eddie Osmani has a CLI which you can just go to your terminal and can run, right? And it will give you the log on the terminal only. So there is a CLI for WCAG by Eddie Osmani. Yeah, you can tell that. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
What does WCAG mean?
It's Web Content Accessibility Guidelines.
Are they from the W3C?
So W3C has WAI, that is a specific organization work in accessibility. And under WAI, these guidelines have released. Right. Yeah.
The screen again with the QR code
Sure, why not?
or skip
Yeah, here you go. So I made the QR code only because I want my users to access the slides at least. Yeah.
More than a question actually was I was hoping for maybe I don't know what you think about it. If we make it possible for any person to use our website it would be possible to talk to the website because somebody who cannot see is just probably gonna talk to the website. So if we put it in a business where like if you're asked, you'll be able to make your website very easy to use and Alexa devices,
exactly,
Google Home, and
exactly.
Stuff. So because people not with disability, every people could talk to the website.
Exactly.
Running on the park.
That makes more sense. So basically, yes, by these principles, you are not only making it for disabled people, but you are making for your users. You are increasing the usability for your users as a whole as well. So coming up devices, if you go to the robust principle which says whatever you are writing here should be compatible to future devices, that future devices actually are the Alexa or Google Home. So if you are making and applying these guidelines, and if a normal person wants to communicate by the voice to your website, he'll be able to do so because your website is WCAG compliant. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Do you have any analytics data on like which browsers do people with disabilities use?
Not sure about the percentages, but most of the people who are disabled don't rely on browsers only. So they are more they're more on other accessibility user agents like screen readers, magnifiers, or some agents like hardwares like headbands, mouse sticks, and the switches, which I have shown in the presentation. So these are the people who access the web content very differently. And when we talk about only browsers, even if it is working in Chrome, we are very good developers. We can make it work in Mozilla. But it is very difficult to make it work with other accessibility options like screen readers. Though, if you go by these principles one by one, checking like AA compliance is met or not, you will end up with a website that actually will work with all accessibility devices as well. Right? Does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah.
Is there a screen reader that is good for starting to use it so we can experience by ourselves?
Yes, very good question. Yeah, there is one Chrome extension which I use to check my websites, that is ChromeVox. So ChromeVox is a free Chrome extension you can just download, and you can get the same experience your users will get when they use the screen reader. Are we left with other questions? Any other? Okay, thank you from my side.